everybody, and welcome to Photomikes Garage. Okay, so behind me you can see I have two Crown Vic police interceptors, one there and one there. And today I thought I would just do a short little video on what I do to prepare for sale or prepare for myself auction police interceptors. So basically you buy them from the auction and they're often in bad shape. There's things wrong, they don't look good. So here's what I do to make them look good and bring them back to shape in a very simple way. Okay, I'm going to start off with this one. This is a 2009 Crown Vic Police Interceptor P71 with 195,000 kilometers on it. Now remember, that's kilometers because I live in Canada, so the mileage on that is quite a bit less, maybe like 100,000, a little over 100,000 kilometers. And this one is in the typical condition. I have given it a wash, but this is the typical condition that you will get it from the auction. Oh, also I have done one thing. I have painted the wheels. That's a standard thing I do with all these cars. You paint the wheels. The wheels almost always are rusty, dirty, terrible. So it makes a huge difference in the visual aspect of the car if you can paint the wheels. So here you can see this one in the sunshine and how good that looks. So if you're going to get a white RCMP car, RCMP stands for Royal Canadian Mounted Police, which is our federal police force that we have up here in Canada. All their Crown Vics were white with decals. So that's why there's a lot of white Crown Vics up here in Canada. There's an occasional detective car that will be like a ghost car, but these are the ones that they use for regular patrol. So the first thing I do is I paint the wheels. And I do it fairly carefully, but really I don't care if I get a little overspray. I just wipe it off the tires. So I don't even tape off the tires. I just wipe off the overspray off the tires, take the hubcaps off, paint it. There you go, it's done. Huge difference. Okay, this is the paint that I actually use. I've got like a carton of these because that's so good. Now, you know, you can paint on a paint and it'll run. It's thin and runny. It's no good. This goes on thick. It goes on thick. It doesn't run too easily. And semi-gloss is what you want for these cars. You don't want gloss. They never came with gloss. They came with flat or semi-gloss. I go with semi-gloss. And this is the paint to get, Tremclad Rust paint. It's fantastic. Both in the black semi-gloss for that, and also if you want to sort of paint over some of the missing patches of paint, you can use the white Tremclad Rust paint. It's also very good. And on these cars, I don't use gloss, I use semi-gloss. Because with a white vehicle, it doesn't really show up too much anyway, whether you have gloss or semi-gloss. Okay, going around the exterior, you can see that these cars came with reflective strips all the way down the fenders, down the doors, and right into the rear quarter panel. These reflective strips are very, very hard to take off, and that's why they leave them on. They take off all the other decals, but they leave on the reflective strips. Now if they're in good shape, I will leave them on because it is so much work to take them off. But if they're in bad shape, really messed up, you got to go ahead and take it off. And the way to do that, as you know, is with a heat gun. You heat these up a little bit and scrape them with a plastic scraper. It's a lot of work. It can be done though. So for the exterior, it's just a lot of work. You've got to take off all this decal material that they left behind. You can see right here is I use Goo Gone. That takes off most of it. And then I also use Goof Off. And the reason why I buy these is because they sound cool. Goof Off, which I do a lot of, and Goo Gone. So who came first, Goof Off or Goo Gone? I don't know. And I often use a abrasive pad. Now, normally you wouldn't want to do that on a nice paint job because it'll probably scratch it, but in this case, it's hardly noticeable at all. These cars are already all scratched up, fairly dull, so it makes no difference. This will take off the decals. Of course, the next problem is all the holes. You got a hole there, you got a hole there, you got a hole there, you got a hole there. So you got tons of holes. You got at least 3 to 4 holes in the roof, and you often have a hole in the trunk. And all they do is they put on some of this gray duct tape. It looks terrible. And so the first thing you got to do is you got to take that off with a heat gun, clean it up, and this is what you put in here. You put a nice little button. You put a little bit of silicone on this So you put a little bit of silicone, pop this button right in. It's not going to leak. It's going to look a lot better. And as you can see, I've got one there in the trunk, and I've got 1 and 2 in the front of this one. So that's going to make the whole thing look a lot cleaner. The next thing I do is you got to cover these holes. This is where the original Ford emblem was, and on the RCMP cars there's a decal that goes right across there with police, and that covers the 2 holes. They take the decal off and then you got the 2 holes. So what you do is you put your Ford emblem back. You can get these really cheap. I got this for like $1.50. If you know where to shop, you can get them on eBay. Maybe I'll put the link in below where you can get these. And I also added this little badge back. Okay, so this may not be allowed in some places where you live, but it is here. You can put this back if you want. Police Interceptor, there you go. Spray on my goo gone. And watch that stuff come right off. Just like that. See, that really works. That really does work. And of course, Goof Off works really good for taking tar, which is always on these cars. And of course, they're white cars, so every little bit of tar from all the years shows up right here. Just like this. Just like that. See? Very effective. And of course, another thing I have observed is that these cars almost always come with great tires, with a lot of tread. You almost never have a trouble with that. And they're well taken care of in some ways. Regular maintenance, regular rotation, almost never have uneven wear, lots of good tread. This particular P71 is kind of special. This is a 2007. But it's only got 109,000 kilometers. That's very low mileage, around 2,000 idle hours. So this one's in really good shape. Doesn't have a lot of decal residue, and also it came with the original Pursuit tires. Now these are Firestone Pursuits. These are available only for the police package, only for police vehicles, very hard to find. They are extra strong. They're Pursuit tires, so they can take hitting a curb. They're going to have extra strong sidewalls, but they can also sustain high speeds for a high-speed chase. So if you get one with the Pursuit Firestones, then you got a gem. Still staying on the outside quite often. The cars are missing the side mirror covers. Usually they're put in storage and then put back on after they remove the police lights. But this particular one, and sometimes they can't find it, so it has no cover. It doesn't affect the operation at all, but it doesn't look so good. So that has to be found in a wrecker if possible. Another thing, as you can see on this one has had a headlight replacement. This headlight's in perfect shape. This one is all foggy, and quite often they have water inside them, so there's nothing you can do. In this particular case, this one is also yellow from exposure to the plastic to the UV rays of the sun. So in a lot of cases you can actually polish these out and make them look better, but they never come back to like original. They're never going to look like this. So the best thing to do is simply buy them and replace them. It's super cheap, easy to do, so just buy one. You can get in some places 2 headlights for $150. So there's no reason not to simply get these headlights. It'll make the car look so much better, so much newer. And if you're going to sell it, a lot easier to sell. Okay, into the engine compartment. And again, like I said, the maintenance is pretty good on these vehicles. Usually the oil will be freshly changed and up to the limit. Everything will look good, but it's got to be checked. You got to check it. And if the oil does look dirty, you better change it. But usually the maintenance is good. And as you can see, for a car that's used hard, this is clean. Now I cleaned it up a little bit, but basically this is how they come. They come like this from the auction house. So, you don't have to do nothing. They look good. The engine looks clean. Any of these cars that I've sold, everyone remarks on how clean the engine bay is. Because most people, you know, on a car like this, they don't do anything. It's dusty, it's horrible, but this is clean. So you have almost nothing to do except to look for the normal problems that you find with the 4.6 liter engine, and that is cracked manifolds. This one's fine. I've only had one car that actually had a cracked manifold. Most of them are fine, but that is a known problem because this is plastic. Under the heating conditions, it can crack, and you can get a little bit of a coolant leak there. But they're cheap. Bit of labor to take them up, but the actual manifold itself can be bought on eBay for like $100, $150. Again, nothing's expensive on these cars. So if you have a cracked manifold, it's not the end of the world. It can be replaced. And one more thing while we're here is that quite often these hood dampeners are worn out on these cars, and the hood will slowly close and then suddenly slam on you. And so it's actually a good idea to buy some replacement ones. Again, these are inexpensive, easy to replace. It's a good idea, and that can save you a bit of trouble. And that's one of the things I look for as one of the first steps inside the engine bay as well. Oh, another thing to look out for is the belts. Again, changing the belts is not hard, and you should consider doing that if you have a cracked belt. Now again, the maintenance is good, so I've only had to replace one belt so far, but that's something to look into as well. The most important thing is to check is the braking system. Again, never had an issue, never had an issue. The police are extremely good at maintaining the braking systems of these vehicles. Every vehicle I've ever had has had lots of brake pad, and the rotors have been good. Except for one. Yes, there was one that had warped rotors. I replaced them and the car was fine. So that's the only thing you have to worry about is warped rotors. I have noticed a couple with a little bit of warp, so that is a common problem. But again, the discs are cheap. 30 bucks each, you can find them. So there's no reason not to replace it. I think I have a video where I actually did replace the brake rotors, and so I may put a link below for that. But anyway, easy to do. And it's usually just the front rotors that are warped. That's the only problem I've ever had with the braking system. The brake fluid is changed regularly, as is the oil, transmission fluid, everything. So that usually isn't a problem. Still with the exterior on the rear bumper, often they have cracks like this. Not much you can do about that except to get a new bumper. But they also have a bit of a problem, like what I call the droopy rear end. The bumper seems to come down. I don't know if you can see that. It seems kind of droopy, Don't know if you can see, but this one is not as droopy. That's got a droopy rear end. Now let's take a look at the reasons why. Right here is where the bumper is actually mounted to a plastic bracket that goes up to your rebar. This one's in good shape, mounted properly. So that's why it hasn't got a droopy rear end. This one, you can see the bumper's been replaced, or something's happened, a little bit of an accident, and they haven't replaced the bolts. And also the plastic brackets are cracked and broken. I don't know if you can see that. So that's another thing. I can either try to just fasten it to the brackets as they are, or get new brackets out of a wrecked Crown Vic. But that's the reason why it's droopy. And all you got to do is just replace these brackets and then mount it up, and it'll be back in place. Another thing that's great is that these cars come E85 capable right from the factory, right from the get-go. So depending on which state you live, if you've got E85 and if it's cheap, you can run these cars so cheaply with E85. Actually, gas is everywhere cheap right now due to the virus, but basically E85, I think from 2009 on, they were E85 capable. And if you see this yellow cap, that means that you got that, and you can save a lot of money. Just use E85. Okay, next on to the interior. You're going to do a general cleaning. Usually they come from the auction very clean. This one is exactly the way it came from the auction. Just a little bit of dust. Otherwise, they do a good job of cleaning. They clean the vinyl floor covering pretty good. But if it's not done well, Or if you have a lot of marks here, you can always use some vinyl paint to make this look a little bit better. That is a very easy way to make this look better. This one's actually in pretty good shape. I probably wouldn't bother with this one. The other thing to worry about for the interior is a chunked out steering wheel. You use kind of like a foam, and once the top covering is worn out, little bits of foam start coming out. There's not much you can do about that. I always look for cars that don't have too much junk there. I mean, I suppose you could get a replacement steering wheel somehow, but yeah. This particular car did not come with any cruise control. That's a big deal. Most of them did come with cruise control, not this one. And again, the rear vinyl seats are always in great shape because there was a plastic seat in here during the career of this car. At the end of it, they take the plastic seat out and put the vinyl seats that they have in storage back in. That's why these seats are almost always in perfect shape, like brand new. So there's never any problem there. And of course, in an earlier video, I showed you how I removed this panel here. This is in the B pillar between the two doors. And there's a switch in there that's been disconnected. You connect that and the rear windows will now work. That's very convenient. Now the handles to let the passengers out will not work because up here in the north, the RCMP removed the rods that go across the door. So you have to go to a wrecker, get some rods. Occasionally the cars come with the rods, but not very often. You got to go to the wrecker, get the rods, and then you can get these working again. One more thing about the interior that I have noticed since I bought these cars is that this bolt right here, this is the front driver's seat bolt that secures the seat to the floor, is often broken. It seems to see the most stress. I've noticed this quite a few times. I mean, with 3 bolts, the seats will still be there, but they'll move a little bit, and it is a safety issue as well. So often the stud will be broken. This is also an area which can rust. So look for that when you're buying the car. It may not be a deal breaker, but they are often broken, and your seat will move around, and that could be a safety issue. So look for this particular bolt. And another thing I covered in another video, often these cars will have either an engine light or an airbag light. So when you go to the auction, you take your OBD2 reader and you can find out what the actual engine problem is and decide whether or not you want to buy the car. But for the airbag light, I've had a number of airbag lights and it's always been code 18, and that means there's a little light bulb behind here and it's broken or has burnt out. And they often break because people, when they get in this car, the first thing they want to do is press this. They think this is a button. It's sort of like a design flaw. It looks like this button. It's not a button. There's a lamp behind here, and it will tell whether or not the passenger airbag light is on. I mean, airbag is actually working or not. That light will let you know. But people think it's a button. They press on it. They can break the light, the little tiny bulb that's behind there. And then you got an issue. So replace that bulb, and often the code 18 airbag light will go away. And I'm sitting where the prisoners would have sat back in the day in this car. You can see that this car had a cage in it for the back. There's a little cutout. Plus you can see the imprints of the cage on the roof here as well. And another interesting fact, of course I've mentioned this before in other videos, you guys probably know it, but this car comes with stab protection for the front seat occupants. In other words, there's a plate in there that will prevent a knife from coming through. And to prove that, all you got to do is unzip it, and there is your stab proof plate right there. And as you can see, it is simply a high density plastic, nothing else. That's it. Okay, let's look in the trunk. And you have a massive trunk. One of the big selling points of a Crown Vic is the giant trunk. You don't need an SUV. All you need is a Crown Vic with a trunk like this. Huge and often empty, unfortunately. Very often the auction cars do not come with any spare tire or jack or anything. This one just came with the jack handle. This one, my 2007, As you can see, you can fit a lot of stuff in here. It did come with a spare, the jack, and everything else. That's a bonus. That's great. Okay, so aside from the big trunk, what are you looking for? Well, if you pull back these covers here, you're going to see this is where the electrical connectors were for all the equipment that they run from the back of the car. And often they just cut the wires and leave them. It's a good idea to, if you're not going to use this power source, is to tape these off and make sure that these are not live, because you don't want these sparking on anything and causing a shutdown of something. So there's that. You got to look out for that. The other thing to look out is to look underneath the trunk lid, because I have noticed sometimes way up here where you don't even look, they stick the emblems that they originally take off when they're preparing the car, such as the Ford emblem and the Police Interceptor emblem, and on this side they usually have a Flex Fuel emblem. They often put it on the trunk, and I've seen that a few times, so always look underneath the trunk, and sure enough, this trunk does have the Flex Fuel emblem that they originally took off. So you can put that on if you wish. You can, if you have a Ford emblem, you could take it and just stick it back where it's supposed to be. So that's something to look for as well in the trunk. Oh, and since we're here, this is a shut-off button. If you're in a little bit of a accident or you bump the car really hard and your Crown Vic will not start, it's a special turn-off switch for your fuel system. Press this button, the car will turn back on. That's all you got to do, just to let you know. And to finish off this little thing, if you check your door, your driver's door decal, you'll see a lot of information here. You'll see the VIN. You will also see under axle it says X5. X5 means that this car has a track lock axle, which means that both wheels will spin. Both wheels will spin. Better traction, if you know what you're doing, that's better traction in difficult conditions. It also might mean you could do a burnout. Okay, that's it. A few tips and tricks that I use after I get the car home from the auction to just clean it up, prepare it for myself, or if I'm going to sell it, to prepare it for sale. Those are the things that you can do. These cars are great. They sell themselves anyway. You just clean them up and they sell, because people recognize that these cars are a deal for the price. They're reliable. They got an image. They're cool. They're kind of quick. They're just great cars. And anyone who drives one for a little while usually comes to that same conclusion. Anyway, thanks for watching Photomikes Garage. I'll see you later.